Okay, everybody, in this section, I'm going to show you how to create something called a baseline grid. So it's a little bit different than the grids that we have before. You can go to View, and there should be View. You can see, guys, in grids, there's an option that says baseline grid. The baseline grid is basically the place where all your text lines up. And if we have all your text lined up on the same baseline, it really helps things feel a lot more put together. So I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing we're going to do is we need to figure out the size of the text. So I'm just going to go into my margins here. This is a card that we're working on, so the text is going to be kind of small. I'll start with the smallest that I might want to go with, which is 8 point. And the reason for that is because if I go in my type, fill with placeholder text, it'll fill that all up for me. And for this, I'm going to use something slightly different. Let's just use our good friend Helvetica New, and I'm going to use good old regular. All right. So if we look at this and zoom out a little bit, it's going to be pretty small. So I think just for the sake of eyes and stuff like that, I'm going to use 9 point. And we need to select everything, Command or Control A, 9 point. All right, and the next thing we need to think about is the leading, which is the space in between these. By default, it uses a kind of mathematical formula. I'm going to shrink that down just a little bit more and set that to 10 point. Once again, I need to have all of this selected for that to happen. Okay, it's going to crunch it up a little bit, but once again, because we're working on such a small amount of information, I think it should work fine. All right, so let's go in and start creating our baseline grid. So what we're going to want is because we've got these lining up every 10 points, because that's where the leading's at, we're going to go in, and this is under Preferences, Grids, and you'll have a bunch of different items. You can see right here, it has it defaulted to 12 points and top of the page. I want it to actually start at the top of the margin, and I'm going to have this increment. Instead of every 10 points, I'm going to cut that in half and have it at 5 points. You can also do a few other things. I don't want it to start 5 inches down because it's starting at the top of the margins. I want it to start right there at the top, so 0. All right, and then I'm going to hit OK. It doesn't look like anything's happened, but if we go up to View, Grids and Guides, and choose Show Baseline Grid, you can see that we have that grid set up there. Now it doesn't look like it's perfectly on there, and we'll talk about how to fix it. But if I do go and just move this, you can see that everything does line up perfectly on there. But what we're going to do now is set it so that the text defaults and falls right on that baseline grid. So to do that, we're going to go under Type and bring up something called the paragraph window. So we go to Type, Paragraph, there it is. And right down here in the corner, you can see there's a hyphenate button, but there's also this. This, don't align to baseline grid. This one, watch, boop, everything aligns. Even if I move this down, it's wherever I move it, it's always going to stick to that grid. And what's great about this is you can set the other text to set to that grid as well, and it'll always be there. Let's hide this. So if you also want to, and once again, I've showed you before how to set up a modular grid using columns and stuff like that, but you can go in if you want to kind of have a similar idea of the columns here being in there as well. If you go up to Layout, down to Create Guides, because remember, we can only create well, I guess we can create columns in either, but now I'm going to take my gutter down to 0 because there is no gutter here. And then if I start kind of increasing this, I can keep going until I get to the point where I have a perfect square. With that, and I don't think that's actually it, I think it's 32 up over here. There we go. So now I've got a baseline grid, everything's going to stick to that, and then I can also keep an equal amount of grid space here. So that's an easy way to set up a baseline grid that the text will follow through. Make sure with every text block that you create that you go into this paragraph section and click on that. You can also do that under paragraph styles here. And there is an option, I believe it's under justification, somewhere in here, indents and spacing, align to grid right there. Indents and spacing, align to grid, all lines first line only, etc. All right. So this is a great way to keep things nice and organized and neat, especially in such a small space like a card. I hope this is helpful for you, and I'll talk to you later.